Welcome everyone to another Univirtual experience. It's been 20 days. We've been going strong for 20 days. We've got another 10 days or so to go. We've probably had 100 plus events already and some real amazing experiences, talks, panels, workshops. And before we start with this event today, I just want to say thanks to our sponsors and supporters. We have our Infinity sponsor, HP, who's been very generous in the support of this conference. Engage, this platform here, has been super supportive last year and this year. Thank you. Avantis Education and Class VR, making fantastic K through 12 products and services. Grove XR, the VR lady. Donna McTaggart, our event manager and director at Educators in VR and the Univirtual Experience. Waking Dream, LBX Immersive, our videographers, Fox, Cal, Tony, and Tony Cubed Studios. Thank you so much. And all of our volunteers as well, our community and hosts and guests and speakers in this whole environment and ecosystem. Thank you very much. Julie, I'm going to hand it over to you. What have you got in store for us today?
Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for joining us, and especially thank you to Educators in VR and Virtual World Society for hosting this month-long event where every day is a learning experience, which should be like everyday life. So hopefully it won't end at the end of May. But today I'd like to welcome everybody and introduce my guests on the stage who I've brought to talk to us in closing the skills. And today we're missing one person. Hopefully David Bass-Clark from Unity College will be here shortly. But today, to my right, I have my partner and husband, Alan Smithson. Both do an introduction of yourselves, but Ben Erwin from PowerSimple and Tracy Cosgrove from VRHTI. And thank you so much for joining me in this conversation that is so important as the last year has evolved and we've learned so much about each other and new technology, new applications, new ways to learn, new ways to teach. And the reason why I brought all of us together is to really try and figure out how to close the skills gap in not only technical skills, but the soft skills as well, in which a term I came to use quite frequently called humanics, which Ben and Daniel know I've talked about this a couple of times in a few different presentations, but it's really now bringing all of the things that we know together to talk about how we use them, apply them in our day-to-day communications, processes, systems, while we remain true at heart of who we are, that we remain human in our communications and conversations. And I guess I have more to say, but I'd like each person on my stage here to do a brief introduction of yourself and explain a little bit about what you do in the industry and education, and I guess why you're here today with me. So over to you, Alan.
Thank you, Julie. I'm super excited to be here with everybody. It's such an honor to be here. Actually, almost 1 year. The date, we were on the moon on our first moon landing together. Julie and I came and spoke at this conference a year ago on this very stage, so very honored to be here again. Julie and I have developed over the years a personal mission to inspire and educate future leaders like yourselves to think and act in a socially, economically, and environmentally sustainable and responsible way. And by utilizing the power of this new medium, we believe that we can truly start to democratize things like access to education and access to work through the metaverse or through virtual augmented reality technologies. And we're really excited about the ultimate potential that these technologies can provide to humanity when we can find a way to make them accessible to everyone, and the technology is just commonplace. So thank you for having us.
And Ben, you and I connected about a year ago, and we've done, some great projects, XR collaboration, and really started to kind of be inspired by the change in education. But most importantly, we have the developer WebXR Developer Summit coming along. But go ahead, please introduce yourself and some of the things that you're working on.
Well, thank you, Julie, for all the great stuff we've done together in the last year. This is the first time I think we've actually appeared together on a virtual stage. So that's another great milestone. And it was actually the stage that I was listening to you and Alan speaking on a year ago. You were talking about humanics and alt space, and I had seen that. That was a solo presentation. And then I came in to see you and Alan co-hosting here, and we met right out there and started talking about humanics. And so here we are to talk about humanics, which is something that we talked about on your podcast. And but it was really an incredible experience. You did such an amazing job hosting the Polly's WebXR Awards in February, and you were quite the star of that show, along with Sophia, who ran the red carpet for that. And so thank you for all the amazing stuff that we've done together in the last year. And I'm looking forward to so much fun doing work together with you going forward. And thanks for having me here.
Amazing. Thanks, Ben. Thank you. And Tracy Cosgrove, please share your introduction, and then I'd love to jump right back in with some conversation about hospitality, but please go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, I'm Tracy Cosgrove, the founder of VRHDI, which is virtual reality hospitality training. I started really working in VR 2 years ago to enable me to not just be working in Myanmar, which is usually work, but to be able to also provide a better service for lots of the hotels in other countries. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing. Well, Tracy, thank you for joining. And it's something that Alan and I were actually talking about a while ago, because we met in the hotel industry. I went to school for hospitality management and hotel management, and we always talk about how it should be hospitality first, hospitality and understanding how to serve others as that principal skill set. And, I learned about it in hotels, and everything from working at the front desk to serving coffee in the morning to, even sharing some of that. Whoa, I've got a coffee.
I was trying to pick mine up.
Somebody pass that one to me. That's kind of cool. But really, it comes back to those hospitality skills, those soft skills about dealing with people that it really starts with. So there's a few things that I wanted to kind of discuss overall today, as I was saying, both the technical skills, but I think it always starts with those soft skills. It starts with being able to communicate with people. And Tracy, maybe you can share a little bit about what your work and how you start to introduce those hospitality skills. And I think
Julie?
David.
We have
Yes.
David here. Yeah,
David?
lovely, fantastic.
Yeah, David Best-Clark.
Hey, come on
Please
up, David.
join us on the couch. If you transport to the couch.
Yeah, I'm trying. My internet's still not great, so I apologize. There we go.
Wonderful.
Well, thanks so much, David. Maybe before we come back to Tracy, David, would you like to just do an introduction of yourself and the role that you play in your world?
Sure. I'm David Bass-Clark, the Director of AR/VR Research and Development at Unity College, and been working closely with Julie and Alan and Ben and others over multiple projects. We did a hackathon in the fall, and that was really great. And we're also on some very exciting micro courses for teaching the world about MetaVRse and the world of 3D spatial learning. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, my pleasure. And that we're going to get to talking about that, because that's really, the biggest changes in education and in higher education. What are we teaching these days, and how are we bridging the learning on demand? So I just want to come back to Tracy, because I really want to start with soft skills and those hospitality skills. And maybe Tracy, if you can give us a bit of a highlight of, how do you start your courses, maybe, or the goals and the values that you introduce from your company into building those skill sets that are hospitality focused? And, where do you start from?
Okay, well, normally I'm working in Myanmar, and what was happening was lots of the hotels were starting to come to Myanmar, lots of international companies, but there wasn't enough associates who could work in the hotels to a certain standard. And so the main problem was that hotels were waiting sometimes 2 years for me to be able to go and train their associates. And I was trying to think, how can I speed this up a little bit? So this was when I started looking into virtual reality and the soft skills training. Because when you're working in soft skills and English isn't their first language, is the international hotels would send in their task force to train everybody. However, they're only training them on the technical side and the side of all the hard skills. But nobody was looking at the soft skills side. And this is why I then started to concentrate on how I would be able to implement VR soft skills. And it was, you can imagine in Myanmar, saying to people that you're going to start to train with VR was quite extraordinary, because they'd only received the internet a few years before. So this is where the soft skills training in VR started.
That's it.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Julie, sorry, just a moment. I see David is moving seats there. If one of you wants to sit in the white chair in the middle, then you spread out a little bit, maybe Ben, and then David, there you go. There you go.
Or Julie, maybe.
Or maybe Julie, yeah.
I can transport here, but then you got to sit here, which is totally cool. I'm
Okay,
okay with that too.
there you go. Oh, we'll just
Should I
take a
put some
minute.
music on and we can play musical chairs and we'll see whatever space is left over to get kicked off
I
the
love
stage?
That would be a cool game.
It would. Okay, there you go. Wonderful.
There you go.
That looks a bit more comfortable, guys. There you go.
Good.
Okay.
Classic example of soft skills in action there.
Yeah.
Really?
indeed.
There you go. This is a
Making
demonstration.
people feel comfortable. Yeah. Lovely.
No, that's wonderful. Just a quick reminder, even for my own panelists. Oh, we lost Alan. I don't know where he
No,
went.
he's back.
Oh,
He's
there he
just
is.
sitting there.
Maybe just reminding ourselves to mute when we're not talking, so that our feedback doesn't give off while other people are talking. Just a quick reminder. Tracy, that's so interesting, because you're dealing with a country that is got so many challenges. When it comes to, I guess, we won't dive into that part, but the soft skills itself. What are the first things that you do talk about when you're training these people for hospitality? Is it interactions and communications? What are those top topics that you start to dive into?
Yeah, well, before I go into that, I also want to say the difference between soft skills within when you're doing it face to face, and the difference where we have when we're doing it in VR is mind-blowingly different. One of the things that is very obvious is when the associates are using VR for their soft skills training, they're so much more open, because they're not scared of saying anything. They're literally speaking from the heart, and they're communicating often as a group. So normally we would have the sessions all together. So it hasn't been remote VR. It's been VR training where we've had usually around 10 associates with split up into 2 teams, and then they're working against each other and to see who could complete the task quicker. And you find that the quietest people then all of a sudden become the ones who are just flying high, because they've lost their limiting belief of you know, that they're scared and they don't want to speak up. All of a sudden, speaking in a second, you know, English in their first language, they start talking, they start acting differently, and you just see this whole positive body language, and the communication just comes on so quickly. It's quite miraculous what the changes that I've seen.
Almost like just increasing their confidence, right? It's just, it, you know, allows that openness of being able to be who they want to be and communicate however they want to.
Exactly. Yeah, and one of the other things as well is there are places, particularly in Yangon, that we don't need to go into anything political, so I'm not going into anything like that. There are places in Yangon that some of the associates would never go to because they wouldn't feel comfortable going there. And all of a sudden, you're taking them, so we would take them in VR into a wet market. And they're, you know, they're looking around the wet market and they're seeing everything. They're questioning each other. But then after we've taken them from there, we actually take them there in real life. And all of a sudden, those people who they've met in the 360 video and in, you know, and in the interaction, they're meeting them in person. And all of a sudden, it's as if they've met a long lost friend. And this is somebody who they'd never speak to, never even dare speak to this type of person. So you're even going through social barriers, not just social skills.
It's amazing.
That's incredible. Oh.
Yeah, yeah, that's really, really interesting. And I guess, you know, that kind of leads to the fact that this technology can be for anybody, and it's democratized in so many different ways. And I guess, you know, leading into building skill sets that are taught from, you know, an education level, you know, I'd like to sweep over to David, because one of the things that we've been on with Unity College, not to be confused with Unity Technologies, is the buildup of non-degree micro courses and micro credentialing to help build out small bite-sized skill sets. And you know, coming back to what you're teaching, Tracy, but now what, you know, is being prepared in that remote learning environment, which Unity College, I'll pass it over to you, David, if you just want to give a little bit of a highlight to the approach Unity College is using in building out that accessibility for everyone.
Yeah, sure. And I apologize if my connection isn't good. You should let me know. But we're excited about this. I work in R&D. That's the department I work in, and not many colleges sort of have an R&D department, but it allows us to really tackle things in a unique way. So we are not only building and designing these experiences using technologies like MetaVRse Engine, WebXR, Unity, which you mentioned, the engine, Unity technologies, but we're also trying to democratize access by using tools like MetaVRse rapid prototyping so that others can also build quickly these without having to know, you know, low code or no code solutions. And that, I think, is we're getting there as an industry. We've got a ways to go, but what's exciting to me is, you know, what Tracy mentioned, is seeing more and more of the applications and seeing more and more as faculty and staff, both in higher education and the corporate world, are getting their hands on the technology and finding the value add. And I've seen multiple examples of that, but Tracy, you had quite an effective one there, it sounds like. And that is really one of the things that we focus on, is what can the technology do that we wouldn't be able to do otherwise? So not just trying to find parity with reality, because I mean, even looking around here, you know, this is an amazing tool, but some of the things that make it not like reality are actually some of the things that I think can be the most powerful. Instead of seeing those as a deficiency, seeing them as an opportunity for breaking boundaries is the way we try to come at it. But it's been exciting to even see in the early days as well, the amount of interest from other colleges and from other universities in taking these types of micro courses, and the power of being able to do something in a really, really short time frame that 3, 4, 5 years ago would have taken, months or even years.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things we may not be able to dig too deep into today, but something that I know that MetaVRse is working on with Unity College is, what does that partnership look like when it comes to businesses and enterprise working with education to help close that gap? And I know that, well, I don't know if there's anything that you can share that Doug Studeford, head of partnerships. Sorry.
I lost you there at the end. I don't know if that was me. Could you repeat the last part?
Yeah, sure. No, I just wanted to touch base on, thoughts of business and education working together to close this skills gap. And I know that
Yeah.
you've been doing projects already that have stirred up some proof of concepts and things like that, and maybe talk about
Yeah.
a few initiatives there.
Sure. I can talk about, some of the most interesting ones, I think, to businesses. When you think about big corporations are the one, they're often driven by, understandably profits, right? And some of the most interesting ones that we've stumbled across are very expensive problems like underwater welding. Training someone to do something that otherwise would have cost, hundreds of thousands of dollars to be on site, but can be translated into something that is much cheaper and faster to make those expensive mistakes on. Or there's a machine in a factory, for example, somebody was telling me about an automotive industry that costs, $20,000 a minute when it's down because it paints the cars in a factory. So thinking about, that's the way we come at those partnerships, but we're also working with and thinking about how we can, and I don't want to highlight something that happened in the past too much, but looking at contests and hackathons in the future that we can do to make it possible to solve a real world problem for a corporation using our students, using our faculty, using our resources, and really rapidly prototyping and iterating upon those to add value to the business. So I would say we've done some, but we're really excited about where things are going. And I wish Doug was here to speak more about it.
Yeah, it's something that we talk about often because, businesses are in that position right now where they're struggling, trying to upskill their own departments. And, you've got teams and teams of people that have never engaged in digital technology for what they've done before. And we're introducing all of these new things. So, this is something that I share, and I've got another talk coming up in a couple of weeks on how do we build those relationships between business and education so they start to work together. The businesses start to use, for example, installation guides and manuals and sorts of things that can be used as assignments to groups of students to translate those into digital sources now instead, and building out that kind of communication between business and education.
Can you hear me?
Really, really is really important, right? So I think Daniel's just bringing somebody into the room.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. So yeah, we'll come back to that conversation in a couple of minutes. I wanted to touch base with Ben because, moving from, just a higher education perspective, there's a technical perspective about the future of this technology and all of the things that can be, that can be done and need to be learned. And maybe you can do a quick highlight on one of the initiatives that you've taken on is doing this WebXR Developer Summit that's taking place next Tuesday, May 25th. But really, it comes to call on this technology that is so new, so fresh, and so many people need to know about it. So I know we're starting at a starting point, but maybe you want to highlight for us a little bit about the perspectives and reasons for doing the WebXR Developer Summit. You have to unmute that. Okay.
There you go, Ben. There you go. You're good.
Thanks, Daniel. Once upon a time, people used to use the term computer literate, and I used to answer back but computers have been in English for years. And so it may not be the softest skill to have said that, but the idea of that technology and code is a lot more accessible than people would think. And the revolution that we're going through right now with moving from the 2D web to the 3D web, not just the 3D web, but the 6DOF web, because we've actually had 3D on the 2D web for decades, all the way back to the beginning. We've had software that could make logos and so forth. So 3D isn't so much new as the ability to create experiences that you can actually inhabit. And what is really powerful about this revolution that we're entering is, especially when it comes to WebXR, is that it's not as out of reach as people think, but there is a major mental paradigm shift that needs to be embraced. And once upon a time in the 90s, when the internet was obviously going to be the next big thing, there was a need for migration from print to web. And some people were early adopters of that, and some were laggards and took into the mid 2000s to finally get on. But ultimately, everybody got on the web. Everybody finally recognized and found their own use case and business case inside of the web. And this is what's about to happen right now. So what I've seen as a developer is that developers are typically just GitHub repos to each other, and they're not faces and people with ideas and flesh and blood. And also, we live and we celebrate actors and give them awards and so forth. And I thought it was, really high time that we recognize the people who are really doing the work, and that the Developer Summit is an opportunity to bring these people face to face, to talk to each other, to get the content people to talk to the tech stack people and talk about the future, because we really need to accelerate this. We're moving very quickly into this. And by the time that we have mass market consumer devices, particularly Apple is expected to have their device on the market in a couple of years. And when that happens, there's going to be a gold rush. But the tech is here today, and I think it's really important that people embrace it now. And so I'm hoping that the impact of the Developer Summit will accelerate that.
Yeah, and you know what? While you're talking about numbers, I'm just going to ask Alan if you can kind of pull up a few for us. Last week, Alan did a talk of XR by the numbers, and it really goes to show, maybe Alan, if you can highlight a few of those, that how quickly the markets are accelerating. And when we see the markets accelerate, we got to get the education going. We're going to need to fill these spots. But
Sure.
yeah, I'll pass it over to you, Alan.
Yeah, to Ben's point exactly, and Julie's point, we're hitting the exponential curve of XR. So if you look at the Garter hype cycle, which is a cycle that basically says, okay, there's a huge hype about a product, then the trough of disillusionment, and then a peak of usefulness. And when it kind of comes off the trough, it's no longer new. And AR and VR are actually off the Garter chart completely. They come back because there may be a second hype, but what we're about to enter into, if you put into perspective from strictly a numbers standpoint, in 2020, the entire XR market was about $31 billion, entire thing. Microsoft just got an order for $22 billion for a bunch of HoloLenses. So that one order is almost as large as the entire industry was last year. And it's predicted that this industry will grow by 62% compounded annual growth rate over the next 5 years to 10x its size, from 30 billion to about 300 billion. The PwC estimates that XR will create about $1.5 trillion to the global economy by the end of the decade. So we're talking, there you go. There you go. So there's the Garter hype cycle. So you can see it kind of goes up. There's like a peak of everybody's expectations, excited. What year is this one? And it's by year, by the way. So this is 2020, July of 2020. So if you look, July of 2020, as of last year, VR and AR are not even on this. They're gone. They're already in the plateau of productivity. So we're already way past the hype cycles. we've been through the hype cycles. We've, investments have come in monster waves and then dried up, and now they're coming back again. In the next 10 years, sums of money will be made in this industry, and over the next decade, it's really revolutionary.
It's revolutionary, but it's also overwhelming, right? Like there's
very fast. And something I read the other day, there's a book a friend of mine wrote called Deep Tech, and it's about the technologies, IoT, quantum computing, 3D printing, XR, AI, and I can't remember the last one. Anyway, the whole idea is that they're coming fast and they're all compounding together. So XR is helping with material science research, which is being aided by quantum computers because they're using AI to calculate. It's just boom. So we're actually about to hit double exponentials, and just strap in your seatbelts because it's about to get crazy.
So, okay, we can sit here and talk about crazy and, kind of be scared on the sidelines, but everybody's going to ask, okay, so how do we do this? How do we change education? How do we close that skills gap? How do we get people ready? I know even from MetaVRse perspective that we're looking for team members now to join us. And that's one reason why we started to partner with Unity College, was to build out a course curriculum that could teach others about our own platform so that we could find the creators out there to join us. So this is just one facet of, the entire ecosystem. But one of the things that I like to talk about, and I want to make sure that everybody here kind of leaves with a few ideas, is it's now a time of helping each other and collaborating. And we talk about templates from a perspective of our engine of trying to design things that people can copy. And I need to put that out there into the educators world, that we now need templates. We need things to help each other as we progress through this growth stage, because we can't all do it all by ourselves. We can't all create things, from scratch all the time, because there's just so much, as Alan noted, things are building on top of each other. So we need to collaborate. And I guess what I'd like to talk about in our last 20 minutes is, what kind of templates, what kind of frameworks do we need? Not just ourselves, but the people in the audience and listening and watching. What kind of frameworks do we need to start to, to build with, to offer each other, to help each other transform, to, and including these new skill sets that are out there. So maybe Tracy, I'll pass that over to you if there's any kind of insight that you could help contribute towards this, the conversation today, that people can take away that's a little bit more tangible.
Yeah, I mean, I know that I'm on a very different wavelength to everybody else. I'm literally starting from the ground up, from working with people who are not used to even seeing foreigners. And I've chosen to, to concentrate on ground level right the way through. And I think it's quite different. I agree. If I look at how much I've learned in the last year, I'm very lucky that there's been lots and lots of people in the community who've helped me. I just write on LinkedIn, oh, I'm looking for this. And within half an hour, I've got my answer. Or you go onto a Discord chat. And one thing that I find which is fantastic is people are so willing to share and to help. And this is what we need. More people who are willing to share. If you know something, share it. It's not, we're not in a competition. We're here to help. And I think that's my most important message is, first of all, I'm thankful for everybody who's helped me. Literally everybody who's helped me along the way. And I really believe that the more and more people who are helping each other, the quicker we get this out to more people.
And I think we just have to stop and
That's
say, like,
amazing.
that's a soft skill right there.
Yay.
Right? That's a
Yay.
soft skill right there of helping each other. And, you know, that's one of the reasons why I wanted somebody like yourself, Tracy, with the hospitality industry is just, you know, it's about helping people and, you know, moving people through this transformational stage that we're going through because we are dealing with people who just don't know anything about technology. And one of the things that the course creator at Unity College talks about is, you know, we started our course to build that grandma could understand it, so that we knew we were starting right from the bottom. So Tracy, you know, when we're ready to release this user-based knowledge of spatial understanding, maybe that's something that your students can take advantage of. The first free course, the course is free, so it's like introducing that basic knowledge of spatial understanding. So there can, there's something there that we'd like to share with you.
Yeah, I'll just, you know, just one more thing. It's quite funny because I started this journey 2 years ago. And when I think back then to what I know now, it's unbelievable. So if a 55-year-old woman who's a hospitality trainer can learn how to create VR scenarios and set, you know, and work with over 3,500 associates in soft skills, anybody can do it. You just have to go for it and do it.
Tracy, you're amazing. I think it's really incredible. And it reminds me of a quote I heard maybe 6 years ago. And it was from a Hollywood director talking about VR. And he said, look, whether you're a single, you know, person in your basement or you're the director of a Hollywood studio, this is all new to everyone. So just get started. And so congratulations for doing it and just get it done.
Thank you.
And then I guess, David, you know, from a perspective of higher education and, you know, where to start, I know Unity College was already working towards remote education even before COVID hit. So you guys kind of got yourselves going a few months before everybody because you were already there. And I know that some universities obviously have a bit more challenge of turning completely remote, but what would you suggest if you were to higher education somewhere out in the world? And I know you've played a huge part in Unity College's ways of transforming itself. So I guess, you know, in recognizing it, having a champion aboard like yourself who is thinking with innovation in mind and adopting new skill sets and things like that would be first step. But what would your advice to, you know, higher education institutions out there that are transforming as we speak? Because if you're still sitting there a year later, then you're not going to survive. So they're doing things, but maybe, you know, what are some of the things that you're working on that could be templated or as a framework that you could share?
Yeah, gosh, so much there. I just wanted, I don't know you, Tracy, but I wanted to echo I can't clap because I'm frozen in time here. I don't have a VR headset on. So, but I
We'll
was
clap for
clapping, I was clapping in my own way. Oh, there we go. Yes, perfect. Lovely. But that's just very inspiring. But to answer your question, Julie, I think it might sound trite, but my overarching advice would be, if you're not already uncomfortable, get uncomfortable. And what I mean by that is, I'm a little worried when I look over the next year that, you know, COVID will become in some people's minds kind of a memory. And in many ways, that has been an instigator or a catalyst for a lot of this rapid development in a place we were already going. And so what I don't want to see in higher ed, and I'm already starting to see a little bit, is sort of this reversion back to the normal, right? And I think we've made so much progress. I'm so excited to continue it. And I think that there's communities here, you know, MetaVRse, the Unity College, but also iLearn. We have a CHEX consortium of 200 institutions from around the world in the United States and Canada. It's the Champions for Higher Education XR, so check that out. There's just so many communities, and I think we could all do a better job of making more OER resources, open educational resources. And it's a very altruistic, endeavor to work really hard at something and then open it up. But that's really what I think many of us are trying to do, and just continuing to share those resources. And then to think about the skills, as you pointed out, there's two more things I'll add. One is to think about the skills that are going to transcend the different software or technology that might come out. And Ben sort of alluded to this, but what are the skills, the spatial design skills that everyone will need to know if they want to work in this industry, or most will need to understand, regardless of what platforms and services may come and go? Really focusing on that when we think about teaching people how to build their own experiences. And then also thinking about, I really believe that everything is going to nod again towards your event next week, but I really believe everything is headed towards WebXR. I think that technology is going to become so powerful over the next 5 to 10 years, and it's platform agnostic. And so you're able to have an iPad and an iPhone and a computer and an Oculus and a Pico and all these different devices on one web link. And so I think keeping an eye towards those technologies that help democratize these things will be great as well. But stay uncomfortable, I think, over this next 6 months, and keep searching for that innovation would be and reach out to the communities that exist.
Communities are so important, and both of you just, you mentioned a lot of those. So, and speaking of communities, Ben, why don't you, dive into a little bit more of what we're doing with WebXR Developer Summit? Is that something that we should replicate and start to, here, these are all the things you need to teach? Maybe we start to bundle up that May 25th as a full education package of highlighted stuff that needs to be taught. You have to unmute.
We've had so many great conversations over the years with many of our friends and colleagues, including Daniel over here, about the onboarding of educators into XR. And it's a complete paradigm shift of the way that we think. So when we're talking about spatial design, which was a key word to bring up, the idea that we need to rethink how we think about this is the major part of it. But you're spot on about the why of WebXR in terms of all of these devices and how this is going to grow over the years. And I'm so glad that you're going to be at the summit next week to make that very case, because it is so important. And as far as you're asking about community, there's are communities within, they're nested communities, if you will. And developers and designers have mutually exclusive expertise, but they also have crossover expertise. So when you talk about humanics, and the thing that really resonated with me about humanics is the whole person concept. So it's, a lot of people have very linear pursuits when it comes to specializations, and that's great. The world needs specialists, but one of the things that I've always strived for in my work is to understand all the jobs of the people that I work with, even if I'm not a specialist in that particular area. I really enjoy understanding it, but I think that when it comes to the combination of design and development as it relates to XR, and I'll give one really important example about looking at the interface. This is just sort of stuff that has been kicking around in the back of my mind as I've been doing this work lately, is that because my background is as a web developer, and so I've been building the 2D web since the 90s, and that is just something that you scroll down and you need to make it look good. And then when the mobile devices came along, we needed to make it so that you could easily resize it and still have the content look good. But what's radical about WebXR and the 3D web is that first of all, if you take a framework like A-Frame, which is a language that allows you to just use simple markup language, and you can build experiences incredibly quickly just using what looks like HTML code. But if you look at their editor, and this is very similar to what you would get in MetaVRse Engine when you go into the inspector and you have position, rotation, and scale for everything in the picture. So those three attributes for X, Y, and Z, rotation, position, and scale, those 9 items account for so much of what's possible. But then you go in and you have lighting and you have metalness and roughness and the way that things appear to you. It's once these things start to take effect in your mind and you start relating to them as things that you need to do and things that you need to consider. Trevor Flowers, who is the host of the Developer Summit, he was interviewed on Kent Bai last year, and it was actually the first time I had heard of Kent Bai or Trevor Flowers, who I'm now in touch with regularly. Trevor said that he did an analysis that to make a regular 2D website, you need to make 300 decisions. To make a 3D website, you need to make 3,000 decisions. And so it's an order of magnitude more complex, but yet there's this elegant simplicity of those 9 attributes that just get you started in thinking about space. And then you can go into this thing that you created. A website is a website. It's just a flat thing that you read, but a WebXR site is a place that you can go to and share with other people. And that is what, once people catch on to that, that's really what is going to change the world in the way that, you know, we have been talking about for some time. And it's 9 minutes to the hour. So in case I don't get called in again, thank you for having me on this. I'm going to have to do a hard disappearing act at the top of the hour, but I loved being part of this conversation, and you guys really made some excellent points. So nice.
Just before you go, Ben, behind you there is the image of your WebXR Developer Summit to let everybody know Tuesday, May 25th. Where will we find you, Ben? Where is this happening?
So if if you want to register for it, if you just go to bit.ly/webxr-summit21.
Okay.
And that's the easy URL. The webxr.events is the place.
Yeah, we see that there.
This is the actual Sixtoff website, so you can go there in your quest and you can climb Low Poly Mountain, which is the
cool. Low Poly Mountain. I love it.
I want to climb High Poly Mountain. I just
yeah. Well, as soon as we get Web GPU, then we'll build High Poly Mountain. But right now it's Low Poly Mountain. So,
and just so everybody knows, it is a free developer summit. So there's no charge. We've already got 500 people registered from around the world, which is so amazing. 9 hours straight, so it's been with a few breaks in between, but it's 1 day packed, learning everything from low stack to high stack to,
I'm afraid of an all-star cast presenting it.
MetaVRse and you. Oh, pardon. Sorry.
No problem. Go on.
Yeah,
I just wanted to quickly piggyback on Ben, and I know I don't want to take up too much time, but nerding out a bit, and I'll make it short. I think what really gets me going about this is when it gets overwhelming when you think 10x 300 to 3000, as he mentioned. But when you think about what's possible with that 3000, we think about digital twin of a campus, and you start to see companies that are doing, well, here's a whiteboard and here's a PowerPoint. But what about going forward and backward in time? What about becoming an insect in a forest? What about changing the perspective of, there's just so much that you can do that you weren't afforded without it. And I think that's where it gets really exciting, and templatizing that. So a good example is the ability to rescale yourself in an environment that has so many potential applications. And so I think templatizing those bits of code or bits of experiences will be really important in the future.
Yeah, that's amazing. Actually, it's funny because based on what we're talking about here, and even starting with Tracy and myself, I am not a techie as far as being a developer, but we had this conversation with Alan yesterday, and somebody else on our team is, what's the definition of a techie? because this is what we're seeing, is we're seeing the tech world come together with the soft
Yeah,
skill
who's a
world.
technology person and who's not? I mean, I think if you can work your mobile phone, you're a technology person at this point. The phone is crazy.
Yeah.
Can I check,
Because
Julie? Will we
code
have time for a couple of questions?
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna do before we kind of closed off, and I'm watching
Lovely.
the time. We've got about 5 more minutes, but yeah,
Sure.
maybe this is a perfect time to wrap
I didn't want to
the-
interrupt a good conversation, but I know I have a couple of questions and maybe somebody else.
Yeah, please, please.
Cool.
Yeah.
So if you want to ask a question, please raise your hand, let me know, and then I will switch your microphone free, and you'll get just try and make the questions nice and direct. And if no one's going to start, then I will start. So I have a question for Tracy. How do you create the video in Rangon? Is it in Rangon where people of different, is it castes or different social tiers? How do you create those videos to show them?
Well, I usually take them myself. So, for instance, I'll go to a particular location,
Yeah.
maybe, and I will just go and start filming. And most of these people I've known for many years, so I can go onto a market and have conversations about the type of meat.
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, and these are places that normally people would say, "Oh, I'm going to go into that type of market," and it's really quite amazing, and especially this particular one that I did. When we went back next time, they actually did a treasure hunt within the market.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they remember things from the VR that then go into the treasure hunt.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's quite memory retention as well as social skills and social aspects.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for that,
Tracy,
Tracy.
that's all video stuff, right?
Yeah, and now I'm building actually myself because I've been teaching myself. I might join you next week. I'm now building a virtual hotel, and I'm building it. So I'm building the virtual hotel and creating all the 3D
Amazing.
assets.
Tracy,
So cool.
will people be able to experience that? Like, are you using it for training? Is that what you're doing it for?
Yeah, it will be used on an open network. Any hotel all over the world will be able to come into.
I would love to arrange. Would it be possible for educators in VR to do an event with you where you kind of demonstrate how you're using it? Would that be possible?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, fantastic! I'd love to do that.
And
I'd love to do that.
Stay there.
Build
Yeah.
it.
Before I go, I'd like to just make one comment about something Tracy just said. She used the keyword memory. And there's a couple of aspects to that. And first of all, we're here in VR and we have spatial relationships to each other, and we're avatars, but we're creating a memory together, and we remember this differently if we had watched this on a screen.
Absolutely.
And so what spatial memory sets up is you're in a place, and so when you travel and you move through things, that's really the core difference at the heart of this. Is why is it so important to education? Because you remember it, and that when you do, things stick in a whole different way. So I think that memory is very germane to the entire XR discussion.
Ben, I think I will never forget your eyebrows.
You should see my real avatar. You're in a Quest. You can't even see the real me.
No.
I'm wearing a man bun and rocking shades and everything.
Oh man, I gotta
just
get
before-
I gotta upgrade.
Just before I ask my next question, I want to just give everybody a little taste of I think it's a pagoda in Rangon I found. So we
awesome.
go there.
Cool.
We go
Oh,
there.
cool. What?
Yeah,
And
this
then-
is Shwedigon Pagoda.
Well, excellent. Wow.
And
Yeah.
they're all gold.
Yeah, nice to be able to just go there,
I'm
right?
almost speechless.
Yeah.
I have like goosebumps over my.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
And in fact, the third one along here,
Mm-hmm.
that if you're born on a Wednesday, you go to pray there. So that's Wednesday morning.
Oh, you have your own prayer station? That's
Yeah,
cool.
and Wednesday afternoon is on the opposite. That's mine.
Wonderful.
Wow. That's
There
so
we
cool.
go.
Thank you, Danielle, for doing
We'll
that.
let that
Thank
float
you.
up there just to
Wow, that's
distract a little bit. Sorry about that.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, looks like we've lost Ben, but are there any other questions? But Daniel, you said you might have another question, or
Yeah, I do have another question. Julie, talking about soft skill training,
Mhm.
I'm all on that, and not only during the univirtual experience, but generally in VR, I've seen just such excellent examples of how you can do that. I'll be honest. Several of the events that run are kind of, I want to say, quote unquote, just conversations, spatial conversations. But even just sharing this space together, I think it was Alan who said, sharing a space together like this, sharing audio, sharing that asset there, it locks in differently than a PowerPoint presentation. And this is the low-hanging fruit, I would say. Sitting together, sharing a space is powerful, but low-hanging fruit. Tracy's building a hotel. I went through a labyrinth yesterday, an interactive labyrinth. I felt like one of the Goonies. These experiences, they are at our fingertips now, and I cannot wait for the next 5 years where we get this technology into the hands of creators and kids. Stand back, get it into the hands of the kids, stand back,
Indeed.
and just
Indeed.
watch what happens. 5 years, as much as we want to drive it ahead, it's going to come all by itself. Boom. It's like the Cambrian explosion of species. That's how I feel about it.
absolutely.
Week, actually, Snapchat announced their new spectacles, which are AR glasses. They
Mhm.
actually announced that they are delivering AR glasses to developers. They've delivered them already to some people that are designing on Snapchat in their engine. So a
Yeah.
few years ago, Snapchat bought a game engine and made it the base for Snap Lens Studio. And now
Mhm.
you see millions of creators being able to create face filters and things. So
Yeah,
I think we're already in that groundswell. And of course, once you design in that, you're like, okay, what else is there?
exactly.
Mm, yeah.
Exactly. You'll have spatial memes and all of that kind of stuff. I can't wait for that.
Well, and this kind of leads down another path of conversation we won't get into today, but how fast students will pick up on this and learn it, and
Yeah.
the teachers are way behind, and
Yeah.
so is school. School's
Yeah.
already behind, right? So like
Right.
my kids are like, yeah, I
Right,
can learn
because
more on TikTok than I can from my teacher right now. So
absolutely, I think
that's that next year.
for many teachers, and I'll speak of myself as well, we're in the mindset of using this technology. It's kind of a professional development thing. It's another thing to learn and develop and to kind of try and keep up. Kids don't think like that. They play. They just try and break it, try and make it. And if it doesn't work, either they get bored or they figure it out by themselves. Another friend tells them. And that kind of wait, just try and see attitude is where the true creativity comes from. So we literally just need to enable students,
Right.
get it into their hands, and ideally into the most diverse hands. So we need to get it into the hands of kids in India, in Zimbabwe, in favelas in Rio de Janeiro. We need to get it to those kids because they just think differently.
Yeah.
And then I'm very excited about that.
Exactly. And that's where WebXR comes in. And,
Yeah.
that's
Oh.
kind of why I invited everybody here on my stage today and to kind of share in the pieces of puzzle for that story. So,
Yeah. We've got a
Yeah.
question from Mitch here as well.
sure.
If
Sure.
you want to
Hi, Mitch.
unmute Mitch?
Yeah.
And I think maybe Kenneth after that.
Hi. So with a product like MetaVRse, I think I've formed an idea of how it might be used in a classroom setting, and I work at a university, just to kind of contextualize my question a bit. But I'm not exactly sure how. I mean, I'm trying to just imagine, how I would sort of take it to my teaching colleagues and say, here's a great tool. It's something that, like Daniel was saying, we can put in the hands of the students and the whole idea of user-generated content.
Yeah, where do you
But I'm
start?
just curious to know if you've got any examples of how teaching institutions have used it that you could share.
Yeah,
I
sure.
can pick that up.
Yeah, please do. Go ahead.
Please
Yeah,
do.
I'll just talk
I'm gonna
about
defer
one.
to-
Oh, go ahead.
No,
What
I'm
do you
going
say?
to defer to you.
I'll pick that up, but I want to hear. These two on my left here, Alan and Julie, know as much or more in terms of educational examples because they're out there a lot more than I am. So, but I can tell you, one of the pieces of low-hanging fruit that we've used is thinking about giving agency to a learner to design a space. So, for example, in a marine mammal class, which we do a lot of types of marine biology, right? Giving them a museum room to design and put marine mammals of different scales in, and then be able to walk around and share that space out to other students and even potential employers later on, because it's a space that they can take with them as a link and go somewhere with. That's kind of things that we implemented. And students have really loved that ability to again, take those spaces, edit them, edit the anatomy and physiology in their own way, and then reflect on that with others and by going into their other museums. So that's a very specific example, but I was going to also ask you, because it might help hone the answer to your question. What is it that what department are in? What do you teach, or what role do you have?
I work for the arts faculty, the University of Melbourne, and my department is called the e-teaching department. It's one of those,
Oh, wow.
nebulous terms. So basically, what we support is bringing, all kinds of digital assets into the teaching space. This is pretty leading edge stuff in our organisation. We've got a good, cohort of practitioners working across the different faculties, different schools and faculties. But I can kind of resonate with what you're saying there about the idea of making a space, and this is the space I made. This is it's like a really sort of hyped up variation on, go and make a group presentation. But the idea of having objects that scale differently, or something that you could walk through, that's the part that appealed to me. I guess what I came up against was, even though looking at it, I can kind of master the software within a day or two, then comes the challenge of saying, well, how do I kind of, how do I ask someone who's got a 12-week course to, bring this in?
Mm-hmm.
I guess, I was interested to hear other examples, I guess, that I might,
Can I make a suggestion? I could be wrong, but and correct me if I am, but the MetaVRse engine allows you to create assets, and some of the ones I've seen are really high definition, and they do that on the web. I'm pretty sure you can then export that and import that in various file formats into different experiences. So if you consider you have a platform like WebXR, FrameVR, Mozilla Hub's AltSpace, or Engage, if you can create it there and then import it here, like I'm doing with various assets we're bringing in here, that's a way of then remotely sharing it or spatially sharing it and have a shared experience. That's one way you might be able to do it.
Well, the interesting thing is that, everything's kind of starting to standardize. And so I think the basics of 3D is very important. So for example, this table in front of me, these coffee cups, they're just 3D assets that somebody has modeled in something like Maya or Cinema 4D, or probably more likely just bought them on Sketchfab. So I think, teaching people what is 3D, what is it, that sphere that was above us, that was kind of all around us, that's just a 360 photo wrapped around a sphere. So when you kind of start to understand that these chairs are just 3D assets, but in particular one, I think it's probably one, put out over, the same asset over and over and over again. And then the skybox of the sky there is just basically a 360 image, super high def HDR, or high definition rendered skybox. When you start to kind of put those things together, and even the mountains in the foreground, or the kind of the distance, that's just a 3D model that's out. If you went past that, it would just drop off. There'd be nothing behind it. The Earth in this case, or the moon, is not round; it is flat. So I think
that's great.
And just building a room like this is just a number of different 3D assets, and knowing how to then put them into something using, like, for example, our MetaVRse engine, you can put a bunch of things in, make them interact with each other. You can create a little mini game, little mini experiences, and then publish them with one click to all the devices around the world. That's really easy. You don't have to worry about, publishing to an iOS app or Android. You just publish and share it with whoever you want. I think that's very powerful. And then, of course, just building on what's in here and engage, coming in here and building a presentation in a new way that not only 2D assets like the video screen behind us, but also 3D assets and 360s and things like, like that cube that keeps changing above us. These things really add to, that's animated. I just realized that just now. My mind just kind of moved. So like that add to the presence of this. If I suddenly put a dinosaur on the table, which I'm sure Daniel can do, dinosaur on the table, we can talk about it. So I think just by letting people experience how to make these changes within virtual spaces is very helpful. The one question I have is, what percentage of your students have a VR headset? Is it mandatory? Yeah, there you go.
Just before, so can I just, for people who need to leave, if you need to leave, we're going over, please feel free to leave. I understand. It's a fantastic sign that we have such a conversation going. I just want to be mindful of people. So if you do need to leave, go. We'll finish that question. Mitch, very quick question from Kenneth, and then I think we'll call time, if that's all right. So Mitch.
Alan, no, to answer your question, no. We've gone as far as buying a set of Oculus Quest headsets, which actually isn't very easy to do. Facebook provides some barriers to some, some licensing barriers, but it can be done. And so we're sort of trying to engender and build the culture of using these in the classroom as class sets. There's going to be a number of different ways which it plays out, and it's really exciting that there's such a big ecosystem of tools. And I've looked at yours many times and thought, I hope someone grabs this, and can't wait to work on that project.
Yeah, wonderful.
There's no mandate as such. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And we'll talk more. We'll talk more.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's great, because that's why we're doing this, to connect people. So yes, please take Alan up on that, Mitch, and see what you guys can get up to together. And I'm curious to hear Kenneth
on the internet, on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Okay. And Kenneth, your question quickly, please, and then we'll bring it to an end. Go on.
Okay. Can you hear me right off?
Yes. Yes. Good.
Okay. First of all, I want to say this is actually a gift from God, man. I'm so grateful to have you guys here. I understand the whole kind of keeping it low key, but I'm going to just explode it. This is a big, gigantic, evolutionary change, and people don't even see what's going to happen. And we're part of a frontier of pioneers that's getting ready to bring it out right now. And I'm glad to be a part of it, man. I'm actually a light worker. And what I really need to do is have a couple of templates that have something godly things, some angel things, some heavenly things, some stuff like that. That's what I try to do. I try to bring people to God. I try to use this thing to bring people to see how the world can be a better place. I'm finished. Thank you very much.
Oh, Kenneth, thank you so much. A round of applause for Kenneth. He's awesome. Kenneth, I got something for
a great way to end.
It meets every week in VR chat. So go look up every week they meet up, and they have a huge congregation now, actually.
Amazing. Look at that.
That's so cool.
Thank you.
So Kenneth,
I'm recording, by the way. You can check my Facebook out. You'll all be there. This is being recorded.
Awesome.
All right.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kenneth. I'm going to just leave that over there. Brought out all the assets we've been playing with. I'm going to bring that this model back. Anyone who wants to quickly jump into there, we can have a look at that as well in a minute. Right. Well, what a fantastic conversation. You know what? Julie and Alan, they weren't going to make it. They wrote me an email. We can't make it. Internet's down. We've got to pull out. And I was, how am I going to make this conversation work? They both turned up on the moon, no less. So thank you so much, guys, for persisting. High five. That was cool. Boom. High five over there. Oh, sorry, it's Julie. Boom. Over here. Tracy,
won't be
wonderful,
able to, of
wonderful to meet
course.
you. That's cool. Of course you won't, but I will give you a cup of coffee.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, I'm going to bring it to a close. I'm going to come around the back of you here and just say a huge big thank you to Alan, Julie, David, Tracy, and Ben, who is here as well. To our sponsors, HP, Engage, and Avantis Education, to Tony for filming this, and to whoever invented zeros and ones to make all of this fundamentally possible. I want to shake their
That's
hand or drink a
amazing.
beer with them.
Yeah.
Zeros and ones, exactly. Please check out our website for the calendar. We've got 10 more days of content coming your way, and then throughout the rest of the year as well. There's a colleges in VR panel about to happen in about 45 minutes, which is why I've got to run, got to get that ready. Thank you again.
Thank
Tony,
you, Daniel, for having
feel
us.
free to close it down. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
you guys.
everyone. Thanks,
Thanks,
Tracy.
everybody.
Thank you,
Yeah.
David.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Alan.
Thank you.